Hello, my friends! Today let's look at a few really important road survival tips. Instead of talking about very general and obvious things like don't speed or ride carefully, I'd like to focus on specific real-world traffic situations. In practice, just not speeding and riding carefully does help to some extent, but very often it is simply not enough. There are plenty of situations on the road where you can be doing everything right, following the speed limit, obeying the rules, and still end up in a crash. That's exactly what we are going to talk about today. And most importantly, we'll break down how you can solve these situations and avoid any harm to you or your bike. The first situation we'll be looking at today is a classic rear-ender. This is probably the best example of how you can get into an accident without breaking any road rules at all. In this case, you can literally be standing still and not going anywhere, following traffic laws 100%, and still get hit from behind by an attentive driver. So, a very logical question comes up. Does this mean there is nothing you can do in this situation? That all that's left is to trust fate, rely on other drivers' attention, and just hope you're lucky enough that it never happens to you? Not necessarily. Let's try to find a solution to this problem. The most obvious one is this. When you stop at an intersection, at a traffic light, or simply stop behind some car in the traffic, don't rush to shift into neutral right away. A much better option is to stay in the first gear, hold the clutch in, and keep an eye on your mirrors, watching what's happening behind you. It's a good idea to wait until at least a couple of cars behind you have come to a complete stop. Only after that, for example, if you are waiting on a long red light, you can shift into neutral if you want. Why is this so important? If you roll up to a traffic light, stop and immediately shift into neutral, then even if you notice in your mirrors that a car behind you is not slowing down, you simply won't have enough time. While you're panicking, searching for first gear, shifting and trying to take off, you'll already get hit from behind. But if you're standing there in first gear, with the clutch pulled in, you have a real chance to move out of the danger quickly. To be able to do that confidently in a stressful situation, without panicking, jerky inputs and without stalling the engine, it makes sense to practice this maneuver separately, beforehand. For example, in our King of the Road course, we have a dedicated exercise where we specifically train this exact scenario, stopping, checking mirrors, and making a quick escape from the rear-ender. What's important here is the ability to move sideways quite sharply over a very short distance. Because when you're stopped at a red light, you usually can't just ride straight forward. There is cross traffic, which will also hit you. So, the only real option is to move aggressively to the side. We train this maneuver until it becomes automatic, so that in an emergency, muscle memory kicks in. The goal is for you to be able to make this maneuver confidently, without hesitation. Now, there is one more point that worries a lot of people. Many riders believe that you shouldn't stay with the clutch pulled in for too long, that it is supposedly bad for the motorcycle, that the clutch will wear out, grind itself down rapidly and break itself. In reality, it's not true. Nothing like that happens. The people who design motorcycles are not stupid, they fully understand how clutches work and how they are used. Plus, we are not talking about standing there with the clutch pulled in for 10 hours straight. You simply stop, wait until the cars behind you come to a complete stop as well, and then you can shift into neutral if needed. Just to prove that using the clutch for a long time is absolutely fine, I even made a separate video where I deliberately rode on the clutch for a full hour. For an entire hour I never fully released the clutch, it was always pulled in to some degree. And nothing happened to the bike. More than 2 years have passed since then, and the clutch didn't burn, nothing broke, and the bike still works perfectly fine. So don't worry, standing an extra 20 seconds in first gear, ready to move if needed, instead of immediately shifting into neutral, won't damage anything and won't break your motorcycle. Your bike is far more likely to get seriously damaged if you are standing in neutral, hoping that everyone behind you pays attention. Many people think that this approach still won't work, that it is impossible to notice an approaching car in the mirrors, and that no matter how much you practice this maneuver, it is useless anyway. That's far from being true. To prove that, I even have a nice video evidence. In this case, it's a car, not a motorcycle, but the concept is exactly the same, just pretend it's a bike here. As you can see, it is stopped in first gear. The driver is watching the mirrors, notices that the vehicle behind isn't stopping and simply moves left out of the way. As a result, he completely avoids the collision, saving both himself and his car. And this works in exactly the same way on a motorcycle. If you are watching your mirrors, you will have time to notice the danger. And if you also have well-trained motor skills baked into your muscle memory, there is a very high chance you'll be able to execute this maneuver in time. Of course, that is not a 100% guarantee against getting rear-ended, but there is no such thing that 100% protection on the road at all. What this approach does is significantly increase your odds. There is also another, less obvious factor that greatly affects the likelihood of being hit from behind. Most rear-end collisions happen when we brake too sharply. In that situation, the driver behind us has less time to react. So the first thing we can do to reduce the risk is to brake more gradually whenever it's possible. And this is where following distance becomes extremely important. If we keep a larger distance to the vehicle in front, then even if it brakes hard, we don't have to brake just as abruptly. We gain extra time and space, allowing us to slow down more smoothly. And smoother braking immediately means a much higher chance that the driver behind us will notice our deceleration, react in time and stop. On top of that, to maintain proper distance, it makes sense to look further ahead in traffic, not just at the car directly in front of you. If you can already see from far ahead that the whole traffic flow is starting to slow down, it is not hard to predict that the car in front of you will soon brake as well. In that case, you can start reducing your speed in advance, very smoothly, sometimes even before the driver ahead actually touches the brake. This way, you warn the driver behind you earlier, give them more time to react and reduce the chance of rear-end impact. Plus, even before you come to a complete stop, you can already be using your mirrors to assess whether the vehicle behind you is braking at all. Here is another excellent video example. As you can see, while the rider was still braking, he noticed the driver behind wasn't slowing down, and the rider just moved left. Let's give this guy the round of applause. Excellent awareness, we all should take notes. And now, following the good old YouTube tradition, I have to mention our sponsor, Ultramax Cell, who in my opinion makes the best thermal base layers for motorcyclists. It is made from a special polypropylene fiber with a 3D honeycomb structure. This structure allows the base layer to do two opposite things at the same time, depending on the conditions. In hot weather, when you are wearing ventilated gear on top, for example a mesh jacket, these honeycomb cells create a much larger evaporation surface. As a result, moisture is drawn away from your body and evaporates faster, cooling works more efficiently, and in the heat you feel noticeably cooler. In cold weather, on the other hand, the same honeycomb structure does a better job of trapping warm air close to your body, as long as you are wearing windproof outer gear. That means you stay warmer. So if you want to treat yourself to more comfortable riding gear, check out Ultramax Cell using the link in the video description. Relying on the awareness of other drivers is usually not a great idea, not only when we are stopped at a traffic light, but in basically any traffic situation. For example, one of the most common types of motorcycle accidents happens when a rider is going straight, has the right of way, and the car pulls out directly across his path. And after this crash, the driver delivers the classic line: "Oh man, sorry, I didn't see you, you came out of nowhere." This situation happens for several reasons, and it doesn't necessarily require the biker to be doing something crazy, like massively speeding or riding recklessly. Yes, of course, high speed works against the rider in this case. The faster you go, the harder you are to notice. But that's only part of the problem. A motorcycle is simply less noticeable than a car. It's smaller, narrower, and is harder to see. But there is even more important factors. Normally, traffic consists mainly of cars and trucks. Motorcycles are usually just a tiny minority. And the brain of an average car driver, who doesn't have any special training, subconsciously scans the road for car-sized objects. A motorcycle can be completely ignored, because to driver's brain it doesn't register as familiar object. That's exactly why motorcycles at intersections are so often overlooked, and even in situations where the driver seemingly looks straight at the rider. On top of that, there are additional factors that don't depend on the motorcyclists at all. Take the weather, for example. In the rain, a motorcycle is harder to see. In fog, even more so. If the sun is low behind the rider, it is very easy to lose him in the glare. Intersections can also be visually overloaded. Crosswalks, pedestrians, traffic lights, signs. A less experienced driver can simply lose the motorcycle in all that visual noise and pull out in front of it. Legally, in this situation, the car driver is at fault. The biker may be riding strictly by the rules within the speed limit and still end up in a crash, while taking the worst of the injuries. Being right is nice, but being uninjured is better, so let's talk about what we can actually do in this situation. The first and probably the most important thing is watching how the road situation is developing and riding proactively. While riding, we should constantly be scanning ahead. Are there intersections, driveways, exits from gas stations, parking lots, and so on? We want to notice any place where a car could theoretically pull out and cross our path. And if we see such a vehicle, we shouldn't react only when it actually starts moving. We should react earlier, when it could move. A very common mistake in this situation is that a lot of riders instinctively want to open the throttle and get through the dangerous spot as quickly as possible. In reality, that's exactly what you shouldn't do. The correct strategy is to roll off the throttle, slightly reduce speed, focus extra attention on that vehicle, prepare for emergency braking, and just in case, quickly check your mirrors to make sure there is no one behind you who would hit you if you brake hard. That alone already gives you a huge advantage. If something happens, you don't waste time reacting. You are already ready to brake. And because you are not accelerating but actually slowing down a bit, even a small reduction in speed makes a big difference in braking distance. If the car still doesn't notice you and starts pulling out directly in front of you, first of all, you can apply immediate maximum braking. Many riders try to swerve around the car instead, but that's dangerous, because we don't know what the car is going to do. It might pull out halfway, notice you and stop, or it might never notice you at all and keep going. At that moment it is unclear from which side to swerve the car around. That's why it's better to start with hard braking right away. Only at the very end of the braking, when most of your speed is already gone, you can decide whether to go around the car, and if so, on which side. In most cases, if an avoidance maneuver is possible, it is done behind the car, because the car in this situation almost certainly won't reverse. If there is space to pass behind it, that's usually the safest option. This way you guarantee that your speed is reduced as much as possible, you either avoiding the impact entirely, or at the very least drastically reducing the force of a potential collision. But there is one very important thing to consider. You cannot perform this maneuver properly if you have never tried it. In a stressful situation, you can't just hope that it will somehow sort itself out. These things need to be practiced in advance, in safe conditions, until they become automatic. That's exactly why exercises and structured training exists. For example, in our King of the Road course, there are more than 40 dedicated exercises just like this one, to enable you to act on autopilot in emergency situations. And this specific exercise, emergency braking, followed by obstacle avoidance, is also available right here on my channel. So subscribe, watch it and practice. Sooner or later you will definitely need it. So we've looked at a couple of traffic situations and how they can be handled. From all of this, we can extract three very important principles that directly affect a rider's safety on the road. First, don't assume everyone around you will strictly follow the rules. Even if you personally always try to ride by the book, obey the speed limit and do everything right, there is one simple thing to remember. We are all human, and we all make mistakes. That includes you as well. No matter how careful you try to be, sooner or later, somewhere, you will make a mistake. The same goes for everyone else on the road. The vast majority of drivers are not professionals and don't have any special training. They are just ordinary people going from A to B. So, relying on the idea that everyone will always follow traffic laws perfectly and stay fully attentive is a losing strategy. Unfortunately, real-world traffic is far more complex than just don't speed and follow the rules. If it were that simple, we wouldn't have around 50 million people injured on the roads every year worldwide. That's a complex problem and there is no quick one-step solution. Second, proactive riding and understanding the traffic situation. You constantly need to collect more information. Look further down the road, check your mirrors and understand what's happening not only directly in front of you, but also to the sides, behind you and far ahead. It's important to read the traffic flow as a whole, how it's moving, slowing down or speeding up. Pay attention to everything ahead: intersections, driveways, side roads, pedestrian crossings, traffic lights, signs, potholes, anything that could potentially affect your trajectory. And if you see that a situation might become dangerous, you should react to that potential danger, not wait until it turns into a real one. That's what proactive riding is about. And third, constant work on your practical riding skills. Accident-avoiding maneuvers, emergency braking, aggressive swerves, and the ability to maneuver quickly do not just manifest on their own. They don't develop automatically just because we ride on the street. In everyday riding, we almost never practice hard emergency braking, sudden obstacle avoidance, or escaping a rear impact. That's why these skills have to be trained deliberately, in controlled conditions, until they become automatic. In a stressful situation, you won't have time to think about how much you have to turn the handlebars, how much to lean the bike, or which brake and how to use it. You'll only do what you already know how to do. That's exactly why skills need to be trained and maintained regularly. Sure, these three principles are more complicated than the basic general advice like just ride carefully. They require a certain amount of effort, which is why many people prefer to bury their heads in the sand and say, "I don't need all this, I ride carefully anyway." But it's exactly these principles that dramatically increase your chances by giving you more options and ways to get out of difficult situations. Situations that sooner or later happen to everyone. And the good news is that there is nothing super complicated here. Absolutely anyone can become a good rider. You just need to give your skills some attention instead of leaving everything to chance. On that rather philosophical note, it is time to wrap up today's video. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you soon. Bye!